Picture this. Deep in the Nevada desert, dust swirling in the air, 15 Harley-Davidson motorcycles slice across the landscape like a zipper. But no one knows what their leader, Tank Jackson, is trying to find or who he's riding out to meet. Just 3 days earlier, Heedy received a phone call that would become the most unexpected moment of his 30-year career with the Hells Angels. The caller's voice carried a familiar Birmingham accent. "Tank, mate, I've got a proposition for you. But first, do you remember me? Who was this man? And why did he have Tank's private number?" What Tank didn't yet realize was that within hours, he would come face to face with one of the rarest pieces of motorcycle history. Tank Jackson, real name Robert Jackson, 52 years old, led the Los Angeles Hells Angels charter. Standing 6 feet 3 inches and weighing 280 pounds, heavily tattooed, he'd been one of the most respected figures in the biker world since the 1990s. On his left arm, the words "Born to Ride." On his right, an eagle over an American flag. Now, following GPS coordinates through the Nevada desert, he wondered why Ozzy Osbourne had suddenly reached out. Riding beside him were his most trusted men: Razor Murphy, a Vietnam veteran with a long knife scar across his cheek; Snake Williams, a master mechanic; Bull Thompson, the strongest member of the group, along with 11 other riders. All were curious Tank had never acted this secretive before. "Everyone follow me," he'd ordered as they left Los Angeles. "But I'm warning you, this isn't a normal meet." Tank thought back to 3 days earlier. He'd been sitting alone in the clubhouse, staring at old Harley photographs on the wall, when his phone rang. The evening was already heavy with emotion. It was the anniversary of his father George Jackson's passing. His father, a lifelong Harley lover and a mechanic who rode a Sportster in the 1960s, had been the source of Tank's passion for bikes. "Tank Jackson," he'd answered. "Tank, this is Ozzy Osbourne. We met a few months back in Arizona. Remember?" Tank's heart nearly stopped. Of course he remembered. That night had become legendary among his crew. They had run into Ozzy along Route 66 while stopping for gas. He'd been sitting beside his car, head in his hands, clearly distressed. Tank and his men had pulled over to check on him. "Mr. Osbourne, of course I remember. But this call is unexpected," Tank replied. Ozzy's trademark chuckle came through the phone. "Tank mate, I want to give you the biggest surprise of your life, but you'll have to come to Nevada. I'll send you the coordinates." Tank couldn't forget that night in Arizona, when they found AOC. He'd been in rough shape. He'd had a huge argument with Sharon, stormed out of the house, and spent hours driving aimlessly. "I'm completely lost, mates," Ozzy had admitted, his voice shaking. 43 years with Sharon, and sometimes I still don't understand women." Tank and his crew brought him back to their clubhouse, fed him, and listened to his stories. Ozzy talked about early Black Sabbath days, growing up poor in Birmingham, and how music had saved him. "You know what's strange?" he'd said with misty eyes. "I've performed for millions, but sitting here with you lot, I feel more at home than I have in months." Tank never forgot that moment. Meeting a rock legend wasn't the point, it was about helping a lost soul. When Ozzy left the next morning, he told Tank, "I won't forget this. Real friends are hard to find." Now, the coordinates Ozzy sent led them to an antique motorcycle museum in the middle of the desert. The sign read, "Desert Dreams Motorcycle Museum," glinting under the sun. The building was old but well kept, with vintage bikes displayed outside. As Tank and his men parked, the museum's elderly owner came out to greet them. Long white beard, cowboy hat, worn Levi's, he looked like he belonged in the desert. "You must be Mr. Jackson and his crew," the man said in a slow Arizona drawl. "Name's George. Mr. Osbourne is waiting for you inside." He lowered his voice. "I'll tell you this, I've been in this business 40 years, but Tank had never experienced a day quite like this." He was puzzled what was Ozzy doing at this museum. As George guided them toward the entrance, he began to explain. "Mr. Osbourne visited 3 months ago and asked for my help with a special project. Very generous man. He invested a good amount into making this happen." When they stepped inside, they spotted Ozzy standing in the center of the large hall, wearing faded jeans, a black t-shirt, and his familiar smile. He waved at them. He appeared older than the last time Tank had seen him, but his energy was unchanged. "Tank, glad you could make it, mate. Hope the trip wasn't too tough." Sharon had told him, "Ozzy, this idea is absolutely ridiculous." And he had replied, "Sharon, some things aren't about the money." Razor looked around, amazed. "Mr. Osbourne, this place is incredible. I've never seen this many classic Harleys in one location." The museum walls displayed Harley-Davidson posters from different eras, old racing photos, and various motorcycle parts. But Tank's attention immediately fell on the bike behind Ozzy there. Perfectly restored, stood a 1936 Harley-Davidson L Knucklehead on a raised platform, highlighted by a spotlight. "This can't be real," Tank whispered as he stepped closer. Knuckleheads were among the most significant models in Harley's history, the first major V-twin engine and the company's first modern design. And this particular example was flawless. The original silver paint shined, the handcrafted leather seat looked untouched, and the vintage Harley emblem sat cleanly on the tank. Even the knucklehead marking on the engine block was sharp and clear. "This is a 1936 model, right?" Tank asked, his voice shaking. Snake leaned in to study the engine. Tank, this isn't just a restoration. It looks like it just left the factory. Look at the chrome. Look at the precision. Ozzy nodded. Exactly, mate. And it's not just any 1936 model. It's the same type Elvis Presley owned, not the exact bike, of course, but same year, same model, same color. Bull stared in disbelief. Elvis's motorcycle. Are you serious? George, the museum owner, stepped forward proudly. Restoring this motorcycle took 3 full years. Every piece is from its original period. The engine was rebuilt entirely with 1936 components. Transmission, brakes, wiring, everything is authentic. This might be one of the finest knuckleheads in existence. The older man continued circling the motorcycle. The biggest challenge was finding the correct parts. Some took months of searching through antique markets. The engine block was rebuilt by a craftsman using only 1930s methods. The carburetor is an original Linkert. Even the tires are Firestone replicas based on the originals. Tank and his team walked around the bike, studying every inch. Razor placed a hand on the engine. Do you feel that warmth? This engine was running recently? It's not here just for display? George nodded. Tank smiled. Of course it runs. Mr. Osbourne specifically asked for that, George said. He didn't want it to just sit here. He wanted it to be ridden. Even so, Tank still didn't understand why Ozzy had brought them to the workshop. The motorcycle was stunning, but he didn't see how it involved them. Ozzy seemed to notice his confusion and began to explain. Tank, this motorcycle has history, Ozzy said. Back in the 1930s, it was the fastest bike in the world. A 61 cubic inch engine with about 40 horsepower. It may seem modest now, but at the time it was a breakthrough. Snake leaned in. So what's this bike's story? Ozzy focused on the machine. This one belonged to a California police officer in the 1950s. Later, it ended up with a collector and sat untouched in a garage for decades. When I discovered it, it was almost ruined. But George and his team brought it back. George nodded. Mr. Osbourne treated this like more than a rebuild. To him, it was a way to preserve a story. He was involved the whole time. Tank felt himself growing impatient. The bike was impressive and the history was meaningful, but he still didn't know why they were here. Mr. Osbourne, Tank said, this really is a beautiful motorcycle, but why did you call us? Ozzy's expression shifted, his voice becoming more serious than usual. Tank, I never forgot that night in Arizona. The night I had that fight with Sharon and ended up alone in the desert, upset and by myself. When you found me, I was completely lost. I was a 73-year-old man, known all over the world. Sold millions of albums and still, there I was, crying like a kid. Marriage is tough, mate. After 43 years, it can wear you down. Razor and the others stayed silent, listening as Ozzy spoke openly. You invited me into your home, gave me food, let me talk. That night, you all treated me like family. Ozzy continued. When I went back to Sharon, I told her about you. I said, these men didn't know me at all, yet they helped me anyway. And Sharon said, Ozzy, people like that don't come around often. You should do something for them. Tank felt his eyes well up. They never expected anything back for helping him that night. Mr. Osbourne, we only did what anyone should do. You were someone who needed help. Ozzy chuckled softly. Tank, you're too modest. What you showed me that night is real, unconditional kindness. I was a stranger, and you treated me like one of your own. Bull spoke up. Mr. Osbourne, that night meant a lot to us too. Not because we met someone famous, but because we got to know a genuine person. Ozzy laid his hand on the motorcycle, its silver finish catching the light. Tank, that's the reason I had this bike restored. This knucklehead is yours now. And it wasn't just a motorcycle. The certificate included with it outlined the bike's full history and the entire restoration process. Tank's mouth fell open. Mr. Osbourne, this is too much. Ozzy gave his usual shrug. Tank, the money doesn't matter to me. Sharon always says, Ozzy, what good is your money when you're gone? And she's right. But friendship, that's different. The kindness you showed me that night brought me back home. Sharon and I worked things out. I spoke with my kids. You saved my life, and you don't even realize it. Snake stared at him, stunned. So, how long did the restoration take? George replied, 3 years. Mr. Osbourne came by every month to check on the progress. He kept saying, this motorcycle has to be perfect for Tank. Tank's voice shook as he tried to respond. I don't even know what to say. In 30 years with the Angels, He couldn't finish. Emotion breaking through the tough exterior he always carried. But Ozzy wasn't done. His eyes brightened with that familiar spark as he snapped his fingers. George, bring out the other surprise. The museum owner stepped away and returned, pushing an object hidden under a black cloth. Ozzy grinned. Tank, you didn't think I'd hand you a priceless bike without the proper way to show it off, did you? He pulled off the cloth, revealing a custom display case of polished steel and glass. This beauty is going right in the center of your clubhouse. Every rider, every visitor, everyone who walks through those doors will see it and know the story behind it. Snake stared in disbelief. Mr. Osbourne, you really thought of everything. Ozzy's expression shifted, becoming earnest. Tank, there's one more thing. The document that comes with the motorcycle isn't just the certificate. It also includes the maintenance manual, the spare parts list, and a special insurance policy. Think of it as a 0-mile warranty. George added, the engine has a 5-year warranty. If anything goes wrong, I'll take care of it myself. Tank couldn't believe what he was hearing. You really planned everything. Ozzy grinned like a playful kid. Tankmate, I'm all about the details. Even when picking a birthday gift for Sharon, I spend months planning, and this gift had to be meaningful for you. Snake then noticed something small on the motorcycle. Is that Tank's name? Tank leaned in and saw a tiny lettering that read Robert Tank Jackson, Los Angeles Hells Angels. When did you get this done? Tank asked, stunned. George replied, just last week. It was Mr. Osbourne's idea. At sunset, Tank rode his new knucklehead while Ozzy followed in his old Toyota. The engine's sound was incredible deep strong, that unmistakable knucklehead growl. Members of the Hells Angels escorted them like a royal procession. Tank had tears in his eyes, but he couldn't stop smiling. That evening, when they arrived back in Los Angeles, everyone froze the moment they entered the clubhouse. No one could believe the motorcycle Tank had brought in. Tank, where did this knucklehead come from? They asked. As Tank and Ozzy explained, the room fell silent with admiration. Ozzy sat there too, drinking beer and sharing old memories. You know, he said, people call me the Prince of Darkness, but the real darkness is how people ignore one another. That night, you were the light. Tank stood and raised his beer. To Ozzy Osbourne, not just a rock legend, but a true friend. The room erupted in applause. Razor added, and here's to this knucklehead, now the pride of our clubhouse. Snake smiled. Mr. Osbourne, this motorcycle isn't just a present, it's a legacy, a story we'll pass on. Ozzy nodded. Exactly, mate. Life's about creating stories worth remembering. George, the museum owner, had also come and shared his thoughts. I've worked in this field for 40 years, and I've never seen a project like this. Every detail was prepared with care. Later that night, Ozzy and Tank stepped out to the backyard for a private talk. The stars were bright, and the lights of Los Angeles glimmered in the distance. Tank, Ozzy said, you told me something that night in Arizona. You said the most unexpected moments can change a life. For you, that night was simply helping a stranger. For me, it changed everything. Tank listened, moved by Ozzy's honesty. Mr. Osbourne, I only did what my father taught me. He always said, Robert, help someone stranded on the road. One day you might be stranded too. Ozzy smiled. Your father was a wise man and you've grown into one yourself. Tank's eyes welled up. My father would have loved to see this. He adored Harleys but never had the chance to own one like this. Ozzy placed a hand on his shoulder. Tank mate, I'm sure he's proud of you right now. At the end of the night, as everyone was heading out, Ozzy revealed one last surprise. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is for you. Open it at home. Tank took it, wondering what it could be. Ozzy added with a laugh. I'll tell Sharon, mission completed. Love. Tank's happy again. Tank chuckled. Mr. Osbourne, this story will be legendary for me. I'll tell it to my grandkids. Ozzy replied with a warm smile. Good. The best stories come from real moments. This wasn't just about a gift. It was about what genuine friendship can achieve when it breaks through social barriers. And that 1936 knucklehead, now displayed in the most prominent corner of the clubhouse, would make sure everyone who saw it remembered the bond behind it. Inside the envelope was a rare photo of Elvis Presley riding his own knucklehead, with Ozzy's handwriting on the back. Tank, true kings recognize true kings. Ride free, brother. Ozzy Tank would never forget that night, not because of the motorcycle, but because he gained the friendship of a legend.